Welcome back. So the City of Cape Town has revealed its amended traffic bylaws. It allows for drastic action against those who continuously flout road regulations. It also gives local authorities the power to impound vehicles. For more on this, Safety and Security MMC JP Smith joins us now. Good morning, Mr. Smith, and thank you very much for your time. Just talk to us about the significance of this legislation insofar as enforcing law and order is concerned.
Morning. So the basic function of it is to make our enforcement more effective. The city issues around 260,000 fines a month, and we can see that there are certain categories of offenders that are engaged in activities that are more high risk. And we can also see that the existing enforcement mechanisms don't necessarily make a meaningful impact on their behavior, and it's imperative that we do make an impact. So for us, an important part of this is making sure that when an officer attends to that offender the first time, that we're taking enforcement actions that beget a more meaningful long-term consequence and driver behavior change, so that we can save lives, so that we can save other motorists the aggravation and harassment they're experiencing on the road.
So if we had to delve deeper into some of these, if you're talking about the previous mechanisms, what are we looking at insofar as a sanction is concerned? If we look at a person who is now a previous offender, they offend again, what could possibly be a sanction for them?
So in the past, the bylaw focused, the Road Traffic Act obviously focuses on admission of guilt fines, and those mean that where you are, that you have the right to pay the fine in order to admit guilt, failing which you appear in court. This bylaw now introduces more mechanisms available to officers, impoundment, and where a person is engaged in reckless and negligent driving, where a public transport offender violates the road traffic regulations, where driving false number plates, and is a recurrent offender, street racing. We are able to impound the vehicle and hold on to that vehicle until the conclusion of the legal proceedings involved.
All right. I can see that that line is now starting to fail us, but we do understand you have load shedding currently. But perhaps we can tackle this question. Insofar as the impounding of vehicles that you just spoke of, it seems the taxi industry is not particularly happy with you. They actually have alleged that, in essence, you put out or you sought to amend the rules solely to put them out of business or just further abuse them, as they say.
Well, that's an insane comment, ma'am, because what they're effectively saying to you is that they are offenders of the road traffic regulations, because you can only have a beef with the bylaw if you are an offender of road traffic regulations. If you're not causing offences, if you're a person who behaves himself in a civilized manner on the road, obeys the regulations, and doesn't endanger the lives of others on the road, we have no business with you. We have business with you only if you are going through red traffic lights, if you are not displaying number plates, if you're engaged in illegal street racing, if you're engaged in reckless and negligent driving. So by their own admission, they say they continuously engage in this, then absolutely the bylaw is going to be a problem for them, and I hope it's a problem for them. For people who engage like that. But where people are engaged in decent driving, where they obey the laws, as you should be doing if you have a vehicle full of members of the public or commuters whose lives depend on you, you will not be of any interest to us. What we are doing is making sure that those people who incur those 260,000 offences a month, that they get more meaningful consequences, and we don't need to continuously attend to them. We can, in fact, take those scarce resources we have and push them into other areas of the city in enforcement, including, for instance, dealing with our gang violence, so that we can make more of a meaningful impact there. And we're not increasingly having to deal with the criminals on our roads who make our roads dangerous to other people and contribute to those 12,000 to 18,000 mortalities a year on our roads, which figures are just insane by any kind of international standard.
The Taxi Association confines it to perhaps the current conversations and commitments by the province. They say that your actions are contradicting those of the province, which has in essence committed to register the existing taxis and legalize them. But they're saying the pace at which you're moving at says to them that you're not acting in concert, that here you're contradicting the province.
No, they're talking about two totally different issues and, of course, purposely conflating them for the convenience of their rhetoric. So these are two completely different matters. We're talking about driving behavior, reckless and negligent driving behavior. When you put other road users at risk, you never have the right to do that. Whether you're legal or illegal or whatever your story is, you are never entitled to conduct yourself in that manner. What they're talking about are taxis that are operating on the roads without valid operating licensing permits, and where the taxi associations maintain they're entitled to more permits, and the province have not yet issued that permits because they believe those routes are perhaps overtraded or for whatever other reason. That's a conversation they're busy with to see at which point they can reach consensus on. But in the meantime, they're still not entitled to drive in a manner that threatens other road users, puts their lives at risk. And it's not just them. These regulations apply to street racers. It applies to any motorist who engages in reckless and negligent driving, who removes their number plates for the purpose of offending and not being caught, or does anything else that's dangerous on the road. Those are the motorists we're interested in. They're the ones that are costing lives. The taxi associations in this case are protesting too much and are looking for a reason to be offended. But the regulations are not aimed at them, unless, of course, they are wanting to suggest that they are really engaged in a very significant matter of offences.
Perhaps it's not conflating the issues deliberately, but perhaps they needed that clarity which you've just provided, that them not having their permits and still awaiting the province to actually assist them in that respect will not have them being disadvantaged in any way, that you won't impound their cars. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am, let's be clear. For that is already an impoundable offence. The National Land Transportation Act, which is national law, already says that you are not in that if a traffic officer finds a taxi that does not have a valid operating license, it is already entitled to impound. We already impound around 700, 800 taxis a month who do not have valid operating licenses or operating contrary to the conditions of their operating license, also, which includes being off route. And that is already an offence, and nothing changes for them. So, I mean, they either have a poor understanding of it, or they are misrepresenting the issues. But their tactics are they behave in a manner causes threat or risk for their road.
Oh, Mr. Smith, unfortunately, that line is getting worse. No, unfortunately, that line is a bit difficult. But my last question, hopefully you can hear me on this one. Does it then mean that those conversations they're having with the province right now are just something that is completely separate? They shouldn't expect that in the interim, their cars would not be impounded. That's what you're saying? Because they seem to be...
they're already not exempted from impoundment. We are currently impounding their vehicles where they are operating contrary to their operating conditions or where they are without operating licenses. We're currently impounding them. And we can't suspend those impoundments due to the conversations we have with province. That's been going for the last couple of decades. Nothing has changed there. This bylaw gives us more effective means to engage with people who drive in a reckless and negligent manner on our roads, whether they're public transport operators or any other road user.
Mr. Smith, thank you very much for your time. That was Mayoral Committee Member for Safety and Security, J.P. Smith.